Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Mr. Reward?
Here.
And Mrs. Helen?
Here.
And the chair is here. We will not have Mr. Johnson with us tonight. He is traveling for a celebration of life, unfortunately. And Mr. Peterson will be joining us likely for the executive session via remotely because I think he's participating in some sports games that his son is competing in as they close out this sports year. So he's on. But with that in mind, we have a quorum. So what we'll move into is item number 3, which is Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Helen, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. And Raylene, will you read our mission and vision, please?
Our mission, Liberty Tree Academy prepares students through a traditional, content-rich education in a disciplined and orderly environment to be self-governing citizens who are equipped to carry out the vision of our nation's founders to preserve and perpetuate liberty. Vision, Liberty Tree Academy is dedicated to an authentic, traditional American education, to be a community that actively cultivates character in a challenging and engaging learning environment.
Very good, thank you. If I could have a motion to approve the agenda.
I will motion to approve the agenda.
And a second.
Second.
Any objections? Seeing no objections, we have an approved agenda. Our founding fathers quote, "Pure democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." James Madison. Board member reports. Mrs. Helen, would you like to go first and give us an update on, since the last time we met, on any activities?
So it's been very, very busy, as I'm sure most of you know. We had our interim principal resign, and so Mr. Geithner and I have been working very diligently trying to keep things going and come up with some solutions along the way. Staff has really hung in there. We've tried to be present at the school as much as possible, having a board member here as much as possible, or at least checking in. I think the staff is appreciating that. Graduation is this weekend, and I saw that somebody, I don't know who, put the yard sign things this morning, and I think a lot of the families really appreciated that. So that was pretty cool, neat surprise, I think, for those seniors.
Very cool. Thanks. Mr. Ward?
I don't have
You're fine.
anything
No?
at this time.
Okay, perfect. So just a couple of updates from me. We did have an interest meeting for the Parent Engagement Committee. There was about 16 of us here. I was here as well. There are several parents that are interested in seeing and participating and seeing that launch in terms of, what does that mean for the next academic year and supporting our teachers in the classroom and just other things. So I think that went incredibly well. I had the pleasure and the privilege of attending Mousetrap on opening night. That was a lot of fun. And great work on, overcoming those obstacles of the drips. I think, Mr. Manley, I sat very close to the splash zone, but it really wasn't that bad. There was a bucket. I did move it at one point to capture what was dripping. And I think we're going to get into a little bit of the roof and maybe, where we stand on that as we move forward. That was quite a bit of rain, but thankful for it. Outside of that, just obviously, very, couple of busy weeks since we last met on May 2nd, I think it was. But other than that, I think that's really all I have to report. Let's move into the principal report, item number 8. We have letters A through F. We need to bounce around. If I didn't lay this out correctly, because maybe it makes more cohesive sense, feel free to do that. But whoever wants to go first, Mrs. Moore, Mr. Manley, happy to hear from both of you. I know this is your first time doing the principal report, but we'll make our way through it, right?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay, perfect. So the floor is yours.
No worries. And we can just stick with this
Yeah.
order here. That's just fine. Brief hiring update. There have been 4 positions filled at this point, 3 lower and 1 upper. We have a couple of offers that are out right now waiting to hopefully be returned. and a considerable amount of interviewing and positions still to be filled at this point.
Do we have any idea what numbers?
On the number of positions?
Yeah.
For being accepted, I have.
And there's 9 upstairs.
9 upstairs.
Okay.
Calendar was provided there for each review. There were some minor corrections and improvements, I think, from the previous calendar that was approved by the board. So these are recommendations from the admin team on some improvements. There was an explanation provided for the adjustments bulleted there as well for consideration.
Would you mind kind of just vocalizing those recommendations, just so those that may be listening in and for the record as well, that we know what those recommendations are?
We'll just go chronologically here. So the back to school nights, that was suggested that we return to the same format that we had this year, with dividing the kids up by upper and lower school as opposed to alphabetical over 2 days. There are some testing days. I think that's a little bit more internal decision there, but trying to align those so that they're more effective for the students coming in to take those tests and not trying to interrupt academic learning time. The parent-teacher conferences were intended to be organized a little bit earlier in the quarter to allow for an opportunity to respond to any academic needs with the teachers. Just doing it a little bit earlier instead of waiting until November gives us a chance to get ahead of some first quarter grades that we could make some improvements
That
with.
makes sense.
That also gave those guys a little bit of a break mid-semester and allowed teachers to have a 3-day kind of reset weekend there. And also there's a consideration, especially next year with lunch being free to everyone. So every time we're in session and District 49 is out, we're providing lunch. Or the families are left to provide lunch. And there's some discussion about how that works with free lunch for everyone.
Can I interrupt and ask a quick question?
Please.
Is that week in October then, does that align with the 2 weeks off? At least one, it overlaps with one of the 2 weeks that 49 has off? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So those changes are in an attempt to align with that a little bit. And when District 49 is out and wouldn't be providing lunch to us, that we could.
And busing too would be my assumption. Okay.
Correct. So anytime we can get aligned, even though we're on a bit different schedule, that's to our advantage.
Okay. Did you hear that?
I did.
There had been a November 1st scheduled as a day off for obvious reasons, but I think we've decided to accept that challenge and move forward with having school that day. Parent-teacher conferences in the late winter there would be on an as-needed kind of a basis, but again, moving those so that there was an opportunity to have some actual impact on grades before we get too late in a quarter and can't make any changes. So we would primarily focus on students with D's and F's at that point and not worry about meeting with everyone.
Sure.
Okay. But still no students that day?
Correct.
Okay.
And then there was just an adjustment to the last day of school to allow us to, again, kind of mirror what we've been doing this year and have an opportunity for teachers to be here and finish their grades and things and not go over a weekend and have to come back again the following week.
Got it.
Okay.
Have we got it?
You did great.
Don't want to miss anything.
And somebody counted the contact hours to make sure we're good? I mean, I'm assuming by moving that, taking that November date and then moving that other date back,
I
we should
believe there
still be
was
good.
several people calculating numbers
Okay.
and cross-checking each other.
Good.
Lower school is significantly over required minutes, just the way we're set up schedule-wise, and then we still had nearly 10 days of extra time in the upper school. If we could offer some snow days and things.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Any questions on calendar from anyone?
Nope.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Financial report?
Hello.
Would you mind coming up to the table? Probably.
Because I have the speakers way up here today.
Huh?
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
So what I did is I created a cover sheet for the members with bullets 1 through 5. The first two being just our standard income statement and balance sheets. It was done through March because in May we still continue to get expenses for April, so April will be done next month or whenever the next board meeting is. I didn't know if you had time to review or had questions regarding any of the information there.
I don't have any questions, but I think what might be beneficial is if you don't mind just hitting some of the more key important pieces
Okay.
that might be beneficial for those that are listening in. That might be helpful.
Okay.
So anything that's kind of like a big ticket item or something that would be helpful in kind of painting that picture to 30,000 foot.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the income statement for Fund 11 is for LTA, and this is a year-to-date view with object code line items. There's not a whole lot that's really changed from last month.
Mhm.
We still have ESSER grant funds that need to be sent in from District 49. And we do have one item that is not on here yet, but it is regarding the buses. I guess the funds had gone to purchase computers. And so I'm going to show that in the projected year-to-date that comes on bullet 3.
Mhm.
And I'll show you kind of what our end balance will look on for LTA.
So I think the issue there, I believe that line item for the buses was 100,000.
Right.
We spent about 52, I think, all in 50 on the buses.
Yes.
And then what we did was he took the rest of that allotment that was still in that line item and we used that on the computers.
Correct.
So the buses did come out of that line item. It's just,
did.
it did. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Which line item is that?
This was under vehicles line. It's under property on page 3.
Thank you for putting page numbers.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
The vehicle,
Yeah, the vehicles. That was the 50,000 was purchased
Oh,
with
I
those
see.
buses. So,
okay.
um,
Is there any way to, that went to buses and computers, right?
you know, the computers actually went to a different line item.
Okay,
But
That's
I am going to show where that shows up
okay,
in the projected view.
Thank you.
So,
Got it.
one step ahead.
now, you'll notice that when we look at Fund 11 and Fund 26, Fund 26 is the building core, and that is bullet point 2. Our lease payments from LTA show up in Fund 26 as rental income, and they match. We had an interest payment that came out in March and a principal payment of $95,000 that the building corps paid towards the overall loan in 2020. And there will be another one scheduled for June. So that's also kind of on that cover sheet that I talked to you about.
Sure.
So right now we are not showing a net positive on Fund 26. It shows as a deficit, but there were funds transferred over from a different account to cover those line items.
And that deficit, it was anticipated, if I
It
understand
was,
correctly, to the point where the board actually took initial steps back in November. Am I understanding?
Yes, because we
Okay.
had a negative balance there with reserve spending
Okay.
to cover that
Okay.
negative balance.
Gotcha. And then I think if I recall correctly in one of the emails, the communications that you sent, next year, we're likely to be in far better alignment.
Absolutely,
Okay.
Yep.
On the positive side, I
on the
believe.
positive side.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So going with bullet 3, I did a different format than we had in the past. I think this is kind of a better management tool because it's based on programs instead of just line items. So if you'll look at bullet 3, you'll see the first column is March. So you have a monthly view, you have a year-to-date actual, and then you have a year-to-date percent to the projected amount. The projected is where I think the management piece comes in. So if we know that we're going to be spending a lot of money towards the end of June, I can plug that in on a particular line item and we'll know kind of where our ending balance will be.
Mhm.
So, so you'll see that it's broken up into instructional and then program 2100, 2200, etc. The nice part about the projected view is I highlighted those items in red that are above what was budgeted.
Okay.
So you have the budgeted amount on the far right side, and you can kind of see kind of where we stand. So,
Sure.
So everything has been projected out to June.
Where are the fees and the professional fees? What line item? That was like for the investigation and that type of stuff.
Okay, so that is under legal.
Okay, it's
So
all
that's
under legal.
2300.
Okay.
Program 2300.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there you'll see
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
quite a bit on that line item.
Yeah.
You'll see also on, I wanted you to look at program 2200, which is the 200 computers. So you'll see under technology equipment,
Mm-hmm.
that 62,000 was added to that line item. So it is over budget, but our ending balance actually still looks really good.
Okay.
So
Our ending balance looks like it's going to be about
36 or 3,670,000.
$6. So we're still ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to where we were at the end of last year, even.
Yeah, so
Significantly.
if you look at our amended budget, we
Mhm.
were projected to be at 2.847, and we're at 3.673, so that's
Really good.
really good.
Yeah. If I could, on the technology equipment piece where it says 62,158, is that just the computers? Or was that anything else?
So I think up until that point, our year-to-date shows $82 on that line item.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it is. Now, I thought that the computers were estimated to come in around 56 or 58.
It was 56, but I think there's additional things that got coded to that.
Okay,
There were bays,
okay.
and a couple of other things that came in, I guess.
Licenses and whatever else, probably?
Yeah,
Okay,
7,000 in licenses for that.
okay. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and then if we need to add, because we know that we're going to have a couple more
Okay, yeah.
professional expenses here coming up, would that go in that same legal, or is there a way that we can make it a separate line item?
We can do however you would like to read it. And that's why I brought this kind of to bear, so that it could kind of serve you guys as to how you want to see things.
I
It'll
like
just
this
help.
view.
I do too.
Yeah,
It's very helpful. The budget to actuals with projections is very, very good.
and it helps to kind of manage even from my side so that I know what's coming in and I can have a really good bird's eye view of where we stand, so.
Right. Which looks like we're doing well still.
If I could, one of my recommendations would be for the next board meeting, if we could get this no less than 7 days prior,
Absolutely.
that would
Yeah.
be helpful.
This was actually just started this month.
Totally get it.
so
I get it. I get it.
A lot
And
to
if,
add.
and I mean, and if next month for the next board meeting, I know we don't have one scheduled for June, we'll get that date. I think we need to probably hash out
Yeah.
that date
Yeah.
today. So we'll have that date today.
Absolutely.
If 7 days is still kind of tight because we're still building to that point,
Right.
happy to work.
I
Eventually, I
fine.
think the SOP, the standard operating procedure, should be no less than 7 days prior to the board meeting. So in case there are questions, having plenty of time.
Yeah.
You're not under pressure, leadership isn't under the pressure, or whatever else.
Right.
Perfect.
Makes sense. Yeah, I had some budget items that needed to get tied into this,
Sure.
so that's why there was a lot of
I get it.
back and forth.
I get it.
Okay, so if there's no questions on bullet 3, we can move on to bullet 4.
Sure.
Bullet 4 is required by the building corps, the investors. There's a certificate letter that indicates that we are supposed to have LTA's individual budget, building corps' individual budget, and then a consolidated view. So I drafted the building core on bullet 4, and you'll notice like the rental income, that is our PPR where the state intercepts those payments for lease. And so that's our revenue. And then based on the interest and expenses for next year, that's based on an amortization schedule for building core. So that's also listed. And when I did the breakdown, it looked so much better than it did this year. So
That's good.
yeah, so we have a surplus of about 14,812, and that basically is the interest piece on that one.
Okay.
So this is the one that needs to be approved, and the certificate behind it is the one that Mr. Geithner and Mr. Peterson would have to sign, and then I can have that submitted to Keith Papantonio, the trustee.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
All right. And then if you look at the UBS, the Uniform Budget Summary, this is the one that will be on our website. I need to find that cover sheet real quick.
Bullet 5.
Bullet 5, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm just making sure I'm tracking.
Yeah, let me see that. On bullet 5, the consolidated budget with LTA and building core is listed under 11 and 26 through 29, if you look at the very top. 26 was kind of a issue when I told you that there was a deficit for this year. Last year's audited amount showed a beginning balance of 720,000. And because of that deficit, it went down to 454,886. So that's Fund 26. But if you look based on our budget, we still have a surplus at the end of the year of 469,698. That's on page 3 of that bullet.
Got it. Got it.
And so this view just basically shows what we have budgeted for 23-24.
Okay. So if we need to add like professional fees, this is where we would do it then for next year.
And what we could do is, because we do amended around September, October, those can be added.
Okay.
Absolutely. And
Fine.
so we'll do this again.
Fine. Or our fiscal year ends when?
June 30th.
June, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. So I had drafted a board resolution that indicates that you appropriate $8,215,106, which you'll find on page 3 on the total expenditures and reserves and totals. And it has a projected ending fund balance of $4,164,838, which you'll find at the very bottom of page 3.
Got it.
So if we stay on budget, that's how much we'll have in reserves.
That's what we should end with next year,
Okay.
June 30th, 2024.
Okay.
And then just to let you know, our financial audit is scheduled for July 24th. So
It is. Okay.
How does that work?
Holting kind of indicates when they can schedule to be available here.
Okay.
They'll come for one day, and they give us a list of items that we need to get to them prior to that.
Okay. And then they just come, they spend the day here,
They do, yeah.
and they review things, and then they create how long after their presence in the building before there's a report of their findings?
It's usually around in August.
Okay.
It could be towards the end of August. And obviously, they need to tie up all the numbers and stuff, so they might have questions going into August still. But generally, we've done really well.
Okay.
A month later.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
And that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jim Floor.
Yep. Who's talking gym floor?
So The gym floor situation is that we had some initial bids that came in. It was difficult to get one contractor to complete the whole task, primarily because of the painting.
Okay.
And so not only were we having trouble scheduling that to find two, but having two contractors work together probably offers the opportunity for some issues. So we have a couple of bids we're expecting to come in that would be able to take care of all of those phases, the sanding, the painting, and the sealing.
Okay.
So they're not complaining about each other. And we'd expect those to come in shortly. The anticipated time would be that first week of August, right before school starts. They're predicting that it would be less than a week project to complete the whole thing. We have a lot of stuff going on over the summer with some volleyball and basketball, so we'd like to avoid having to cancel some of those things. And because it's such a short window, we think we can fit it in there. Plan B would probably look towards December and the Christmas break.
Gotcha. Does
Does it have to be done? Like, is it damaged?
The sanding and the painting and the seal probably has to be done.
Because of the water damage? Okay.
We've always had it re-sealed every year.
okay. And that's, you're talking like the clear coat
Yeah,
or whatever it is. That's protective barrier. if you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always has to handle that.
And so what we're looking at potentially is more than one contractor, maybe one to do some of it, but someone else to do the painting? Or are we looking at one contractor to do
That was how it started.
Okay.
That became complicated to find it, and so we have two that are willing to do all of the pieces together, the same company.
Got it.
We can get one of those to take care of everything
Okay.
without having to bring in multiple people. We think that's better.
Okay.
So remind me, it had to do with the downspout, the whole leak, right?
Believe so. The outside downspout that would.
Right. That was
That
frozen.
built into, yes.
And then there was some drilling to break through that ice
And
to allow for the draining.
they drilled through the pipe at one point, I think.
Okay.
So who did that?
Whoever came out to drill.
We don't know.
That might be a Mr. Crandall question.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we could get to, that's kind of been the question that I've had too,
Okay.
is was it actually just circumstance that just happened?
Or is it?
Or was it
defect?
facilitated
Okay.
by the company that came in, I think, initially to do whatever that drilling was to break through the ice?
Yeah.
I think that's,
And was there an improper install to begin with?
I believe, because that was originally an outside part of the building. And then at the second phase, that was built onto
It was part of the second phase?
that, yes, that area,
where the leak occurred.
So where the leak occurred was part of phase two.
the building part of it, the storage unit part of it was phase two. I don't know if the downspout was always there before that, because that was just an open walkway at one point.
Did Canyon do phase two? Do we know who the builder was?
I don't believe it was the same people that built phase one.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm not.
Okay.
Got it.
We'll do some research on that.
Okay. Can we move to the roof?
Yes. So
So he didn't have to move the bucket? Splash zone?
with all the rain we sustained the other day, we had the opportunity to discover some challenges with the roof. So there were actually a total of 11 spots that were found by the roofing company. They came out, 10 of them they sort of laid claim to that we could do some roof repairs. And an 11th one seemed to be caused by some HVAC work. It was actually kind of a gash in the roof.
Okay.
Right next to where that work was going on, very dissimilar from all the other pitching and whatever issues we might be able to just correct with some roofing repair. So as of right now, they plan to be out here Monday to start on some of the work, and it will start with the gash left from the HVAC work.
And who is the company that we're working with? Is it under the warranty?
Chevron.
Is it?
Yes.
It is.
So they were the ones that installed the roof.
Yeah.
Had they actually been out here? Because when I talked to Mr. Crandall, they hadn't been out here yet.
Yes.
So they did come out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
Did they say whether or not? So part of what's leaking is phase two of the build, which was done last year,
All
and
phases.
phase one.
Correct.
And with the phase two, did they indicate, because I see here that they had Miss Walsh make this, and Crandall, I think, sat down and had to do this massive report of where it was leaking. Did they seem to indicate whether it was a material issue or an installation issue? Not that they're going to probably admit any liability, but
I think you're right on the last point. So that was the extent of what I got. It was just some repairs that could be made to, how some of the water was flowing.
About how the water was flowing. That sounds like to me that's an install, not a
Yeah.
material issue. Okay.
Did they give an estimation on timeline to repair, cost to repair, who incurs cost?
So we were looking at the warranty stuff, and I don't believe we actually got that back. There's a gentleman that we've been playing a little bit tag with who's supposed to provide some clarity.
John Manville is his name.
That is his name.
No, John Manville is that's the product.
Okay. That's
No,
the-
yeah, I'm sorry. Then it's a different name.
John Manville's the actual product that's up there.
So, but they were supposed to get back to us.
What's that?
They were supposed to get back to us on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we don't know yet. In
Are they
terms
gonna-
of timeline or price?
Are they going to cover the damage, the interior damage to the ceiling tiles and the paint? And
I think that with all these submitted, we are waiting to get the response on
Okay.
all those things. So they came out and identified those, and then the next step was for us to fill out all this paperwork.
okay.
And now ball's back in their court, and they're going to respond with some things.
Okay. And meanwhile, with recent rain,
Cash, we are going to get taken care of on Monday.
and then and you said that's an HVAC install, repair, or what's?
That's
That
what
was-
they're reporting.
That was their report.
Did
So
they take pictures?
They did.
Okay.
did the HVAC come after the roof? Like, I'm trying to understand when the HVAC was installed, I guess. That's where
Their thought was that it was something to do with a repair or
HVAC came back a
service.
few times after phase 2 was done
Okay.
for some leaks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was the HVAC? Do we know who the HVAC company was by any chance? If we could find that out.
Let me get Miss Walsh on
I
that.
can,
Working on
I'm texting her right now.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. All right. I think that's it for principal report. And
HVAC was dropped after the install.
what's that?
The
HVAC was dropped after.
after the roof install.
Okay. That's it on principal report unless there's anything else that you think needs to be flagged with the speed at which we have been moving here at LTA.
And thank you for holding down the fort the last
Yeah.
couple weeks. It is appreciated more than you can imagine.
I think we're good.
Okay. Okay. All right, Eric.
All right.
I think you're up for X8.
I emailed you the PowerPoint, and you said maybe we're not doing that.
Yeah, we don't. If you just want to talk through it, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe in time we will have sophistication where we can do PowerPoints, but
This is just a list of the services that we discussed in our
Yes.
meeting earlier this week.
Yes.
That are part of the attached contract.
Right.
You're gonna have you're gonna have to talk loud.
because
I can do that.
we're trying to pick you up here.
All right. I'm Eric Tennelm with X8 Global. We have been asked to put a proposal together to work with the school on a variety of topics. A little bit of history of us. I'll give you the one-page PowerPoint. So we start here. We're Colorado Springs based. My whole team is actually in Colorado Springs. It's a team of former administrators, school administrators, principals, and district office folks as well, and some finance team members. They have a wide variety of experience from DEI training to ELL to GT to special ed to administrative support, finance. There's a little bit of everything in there somewhere. We operate homeschool programs. We have 4 pending the 5th homeschool program that's to be authorized this fall. We'll have probably 500 students in those around Colorado this fall. We also help operate, manage charter schools, contract schools, online schools. We have a private K-12 school as well. And we do some schools for a local nonprofit that has 9 schools in Latin America and Africa as well. So we've got a wide variety of experience. We've got a wide task line, but we love the local projects. So most of the stuff in the state that I do, will you be able to forward that PowerPoint to the rest of the board just so they can see it at some point, just to reference it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter today, but I'm one of 6 school board trainers from the Colorado League of Charter Schools, so I spend my time mostly on the southern half of the state, although I pick up a lot of stuff in Denver just because there's so many schools up there. And so we do a lot of school board training. We run what's called X8 Global Leadership Institute. It's a 10-month program, and we're finding mostly charter school leaders in there because sometimes they come from diverse backgrounds. Sometimes they're looking to get some support for administrators that are moving into administration. Could be a teacher lead, could be a SAC facilitator, parent, could be anybody. Those are free to any of the schools that we work with. Those start in August and run on a 10-month. They're based off the national professional standards that the colleges base their basically credentialing licensing on. Todd, that most of you have met, runs that. We also run that same thing on an international level as well for school leaders around the globe to do Zoom, unless they're usually from Asia or Japan or some of those other ones you referenced earlier today. They're on a whole different time schedule than most. But that's a little background on us. Me personally, I'm the CEO of X8 Global. I got into education back in the 90s. I was a teacher football coach down in Arizona. My wife and I are both went to high school in Castle Rock, Douglas County. She wanted to be closer to our home when we had our first child, so we got as close as we could in a head football job out at Falcon High School. So that's how we ended up in the Springs. Been there since '99. At Falcon, I was head football coach, head basketball coach. I was a social studies teacher, business teacher. I was a counselor for a year. I was a dean for a year, an assistant principal for a year. And then I moved up to District 20 and helped them open Discovery Canyon. In their high school mostly was my focus. And then at that time, I was asked to apply for a principal job at Banning West Ranch Academy. This is about 2007. To work for one of my former administrators in Falcon School District. It was a charter school, had just opened. They had 4 principals the first year. You guys probably familiar with that story out there. I was the 5th principal to start the second year. I had no idea what a charter school was. We had to hire 12 teachers within a week before school started. And then they fired the person I came to work for. It was a global management company. We operate about 110 schools around the globe. Charter schools, private lines, everything in between. After 3 years, they moved me into a global role, and I went around to the world training school leaders from different parts and different continents, and a lot of fun things. And so that's kind of how I'm able to tie in some of our stuff we do now internationally. And then if a school is interested, we also do a international teacher, student, and administrator exchange. Currently, that's only with schools in England, in Scotland. Basically, they take their spring break. We take a whole group over there. The school funds a portion of it. They come back on their spring break. Everybody stays with each other. You can do the whole exchange. It costs the school about $1,000 per person. We do that with students and parents now as well. It's awesome. It's a game changer for them. So we're involved in all kinds of stuff. I am probably not that charter advocate poster child of the world. I just believe in good schools. I happen to believe in charter schools that run really well, have an advantage to act quickly and swiftly, and they're usually local boards, and they can make decisions faster, and that's why I tend to go into charter schools. I love them. The ones that are high-flying are very fun to work with, and I think there's great potential, and I think Colorado has almost 320 now around the state, so it's a good, that's enough about us in our work. What I outlined for you there was the services, and that was from a few phone calls with some legal and some board members and some understanding of maybe what might be needed. So it's a very comprehensive list, but it's based around our services. X8 is, hopefully multiplying 8 school services to help increase with that. That's how we came up with it. It's probably horrible, but that's how we came up with that name. And we do that work around the globe. For LTA specifically, general services are outlined first there for you. There's a lot of training, I think, that could be utilized with a variety of staff members, pretty much from every department in the building, and then along with some, could be some school board training as well. If you guys wanted to do that, we do that as part of our fee. Some prefer to use their attorney. I get it. It doesn't matter to me either way, but that would be something as well. It was proposed on an annual basis. I understand we may take it month by month, which is fine too, but with that, there'd also be that Leadership Institute. Your admin team would be a part of that. anybody that they wanted to recommend to be a part of that as well could participate. The personnel stuff was an immediate marked priority from my early conversations. First one was offer letters. Second one was just teachers specifically. And so I'll kind of go over a little bit as well of what my team has done this week. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because we've talked, you've talked, Todd's met, Mark has had some information in there as well. These are all different team members, but the priorities outlined: teacher offers, then admin and support staff. Teacher offers were discussed Wednesday, and I think we've discussed a little briefly maybe. There were some things that were told to staff. Some things were written, some were not written, some were not proposed to the board, as we have found out, some of those increases. So the team here has had to work through some really delicate situations, because these staff members, we believe that they were told these things. And so we have to figure out where that is, and then is it within the budget line items? Because some of them are honestly 30% more, 30% raise. So some are not. So they're kind of all over the place. So it's my understanding teacher offers have gone out.
Started to.
Started to. Okay.
It was Friday, short day,
Okay.
assembly.
Today they started to go out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you guys met with admin and sports staff and Todd, and then I think there was some business office work that had to be done as well as figuring out hourly versus salary and why was this person. There's just a lot of details there. You can't necessarily just put every single employee on salary. Some positions legally don't fall into a salary category, and you can't just pay random people. So if your custodial staff is here on a snow day, they're probably working the whole day. You cannot necessarily pay all the other hourly people that aren't here doing work. So it gets really tricky, you know. So there's just a lot of details. That one may take some time. Is that the easiest way to explain it? Okay. All right. I don't want to short anybody. I think they all have valid reasons, and I think the former administrators probably had some rationale on why they wanted to do and move things a certain way. But there's just, those are really hard conversations, because those are personally impacting people. Sure. And they were counting on whatever was told to them. So from my understanding, staff's doing the best they can in those discussions and trying to work with staff the best they can. Ongoing hiring, we've had a little bit of discussion back and forth of what that looks like, the current positions that are posted, offers that are going out. Next indicator was waivers. It was recommended from District 49's assistant superintendent that the school carries over their current waivers, that you do not request any new waivers at this time. You would do that this fall when you go through renewal. Makes sense to me, but I also wasn't involved in any of the discussions on what those were, and that maybe there was a couple pending waivers that we actually know we needed July 1.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Their recommendation was wait till the fall for why?
Just renew what you currently have in place.
Renew what you currently have.
Yeah.
Don't expand. Don't look
try
at anything
to
new.
write up a new one with all this rationale and all this.
Okay.
Unless it's absolutely necessary or something that we absolutely
Okay.
need. Wait until October, because we'll have another chance in October to do it.
Okay.
Your new school leader will also be on board at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, they might be before June 30th. Or we all hope that is, but that's a lot. You just have to show rationale. There's attorneys have different rationale, and I haven't talked to Dustin yet. He would have recommendations that I may not recommend, and the board would have a lot of information to look at. What you want, and it may come down to you already have everything you just need to renew them. The big ones, I think, that I would flag immediately, that sounds to me like you're covered on. I think Todd might have talked briefly on this, but you have a lot of staff that are not licensed teachers. Mm-hmm. So we definitely want to make sure we have licensed teacher waiver in place, which to my knowledge it is. So if we renew those, because that would impact us in July. So we already know we have staff that don't, and they're coming back. And so that would be the biggest one, but it sounds like that one was checked. Next one was distributing the needs analysis. That would go to all the board members, to the admin team. I would like to include some administrative support staff upon your recommendation in that as well, so we can get a better understanding of some of the priorities that we may not be talking about.
Sure.
that we can hammer out. Summer's a great time. Not that everybody wants to work 24/7 in the summer, but I think if we can plan it out and you can block out times, then people can have adequate vacation or whatever they need to do. So I think the sooner we can do that, the better. Along with that, we had also discussed about doing what I would call a who does what activity with all the admin and admin support staff. Hopefully quickly the day after school gets out or somewhere in there. We have not set that time yet, but I think there's some confusion, and maybe it's just a few people, but I think it'll help really guide us on where to go for tasks.
I would look to Mr. Manley, Mrs. Moore to make sure that that's on the calendar so that can get done, since you understand these schedules far more intimately than any of the board does, but that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's really hard to come in at the end of the year because, like you said, we've got graduation, we've got financials, we've got audits. You're hiring staff, you're trying to close out the year. Teachers are trying to get out. They're not trying to get out the door. They're successfully ending the year.
And looking forward to a
And
break.
looking for some time off,
Yes, that's a better way.
Totally get it.
some sanity balance.
Yeah. And then another priority that was flagged was an actual written comprehensive marketing plan annually. This is what happens in
Got it.
August, this is what happens in July, and then you can just review that. It can be part of the principal's ongoing report or ours or whoever. I have templates for that, and so I'm probably going to meet with you two soon. I would like to talk to some admin support staff as well, and then we'll be able to present something fairly comprehensive to you at the next meeting. If that's in June, I think that's plenty of time.
Okay.
So those are those pieces. So within these services here, I kind of went off on a tangent on the priorities that have been identified, but those are all located in here. I think there's some different things on personnel, student services, testing. And a lot of things listed in here are built around school culture, reviewing surveys and parents and staff surveys, and some of it I understand we have, some of it we don't. That all takes time, and a lot of that can only be done during the school year when students and staff are in session. The financial business office reports, we know who those folks are and can start meeting with them. And then there's curriculum program support from all kinds of different angles. So some of these might be needed, some of them may not be needed. We also offer some grant support, some of those kind of things, because those take time and you don't always get all the grants. And so it could be 40 hours and you didn't get it. So that's something that's great too. I hope I didn't go too fast. I also want to be courteous of your time.
Sure.
You've already heard all this, so some of you.
Sure. So I think what I'd like to do first is just thank you and your team for the assistance that you've rendered, and very, very responsive in the sense that came about. So thank you for that. I'm getting head nods from both of these guys saying, that it has been incredibly helpful and productive. I know Jenny and I had an opportunity. I think we spent about, was it an hour and a half with Todd on the phone the other
Probably.
day, going through some of those
Contract issues.
and that was very, very helpful. And definitely always referred back, well, what was the recommendation from Mrs. Moore and Mr. Manley type thing. So it was just a very good conversation to know that you guys are right there leading the charge on making sure that those things are happening. So I appreciate that. What I'd like to do is see if there's any questions. I don't know if you have any questions at all, because some of this has happened very, very quickly.
Yep.
So if you had questions, I'd defer to you, Mr. Ward, and if not, then that's fine too.
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, very good. All right, well, thank you. You don't
you.
have any questions, I assume? Okay. Yeah.
No, just that we do, one of our agenda items is voting and signing your contract.
Oh, sure.
Under action items.
Under action items.
Awesome.
That's not lost upon us.
Todd said he's got 42 hours already, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not per hour, by the way. It's not per hour.
Yeah.
Good.
And I didn't know if you had an agenda, but there's copies there if you saw it. Okay, so yeah, that'll be an action item that we'll get to.
And Todd's at a graduation right now, so he wanted me to share on his behalf. He's really sorry he could not be here, but he could skip the graduation. But he did share that every staff member he has worked with has been very responsive, very courteous, very
Okay, great.
forthcoming with the information, and he knows that he could be picking in areas that can feel odd. Just
Sure.
he's really does not want to. Hopefully, anyone that's talked to him has not felt like that, but he just wanted to share that out. If he is, just tell him.
Sure. Yeah. No.
It's
No.
been great knowledge.
Good.
Good.
I know I walk away feeling a lot lighter.
Good. Good. Good.
So
That's
for the group, Todd Morris is the former principal at Pine Creek High School. He was the district assessment coordinator for D20 for years. He retired. I brought him out of retirement, and then he was the executive director when we launched Banning Lewis Prep High School. He came on as the executive director to help build the high school, hired high school principal, middle school principal, and we brought on 600 students that spring and summer, recruiting it. He managed through all that. So he does have traditional mostly experience, but he's been quickly put to the fire in the charter school world. So he
Sure.
loved it. So
Good.
He's really enjoyed being here.
good. Yeah. And I know when Mrs. Stanky resigned, we communicated that to D49. So they were aware, very timely as to what was going on, and referenced the idea of XA Global. And so they're aware of the things that are going on, which I think is a good. It's an intent on my part to make sure that relationship between us and D49 board is healthy, and that it is also informative. So, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Discussion?
Okay. Yes. We have two sets of meeting minutes here. We have the April 18th.
It's actually April 20th. I just realized that I had
It
a
is.
typo on the agenda.
Okay, but the meeting minutes are correct.
The meeting minutes do have the right date. I just checked that.
Got it. Do we have any concerns with these minutes? Are we good to, when it comes time to adopt? Otherwise, there is no
Not
concern.
have
We can
any-
breeze through.
No,
Nothing? Okay.
no
Very
concerns,
good.
no changes.
Pardon me. Parent Engagement Committee is also part of our,
Well, I thought you were going through each one. Okay,
yeah, well, we don't have any issues with,
Not either.
on either.
you're good.
I'm looking for efficiencies here. Yeah. Okay. Parent Engagement Committee. As I said in my opening statements, we did have that initial interest meeting. There was about 15 or so parents in the room. We are just so that there is clarification. We are not going to adopt bylaws for the Parent Engagement Committee tonight. Those are still with our attorney for some review. But I think that we are voting to authorize some preliminary movements in order to kind of get the ball rolling just a little bit, and then we'll come back and visit the bylaws in June at the next meeting. We'll identify this evening. I don't have anything else on the parent. I thought it was a great kind of first interest. I think there was a great job laying out what the roles were, the descriptions, expectations to set if a parent was interested in, filling in one of those leadership positions, so that no one was caught off guard. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was talk about trying to do some automation there, in the sense of maybe something on our website that would have some of those descriptions of what those positions would be, maybe even interest forms that could be placed there. And I think we were going to look to Mrs. White to kind of organize some of that, but that hasn't been totally locked in yet. So anyway, so there's more developing there, but it was a very good first meeting. I don't know if anybody has any other comments, thoughts, or other.
No, from my communications with people involved in the school, it's something that's very needed in some capacity to relieve our teachers. And so I think it's important that we get moving on that, and hopefully we can have those bylaws done. We just want to make sure that they're done correctly and not in conflict with anything else we have going on.
Correct. Okay. Let's move on to assurance of compliance. If I recall correctly, the assurance of compliance, I think the deadline on that is August 15th. So we have time on that piece, but it is on here as just kind of like one of those flags for us. Did we have any comments? I'm going to move to financial reports. Do we have any comments, thoughts, discussion, needs on financial report? I know we just received that.
The only thing I think we do need to put somewhere in the budget, if we do vote to contract with X8, that we have that as a line item in the budget and do an amended budget for that. So that it is accounted for in the budget, and especially because it could be a monthly thing. It could be much longer. Right now, it feels like it needs to be much longer. But I think after our new school leader gets started at that capacity, then we will have much more direction, I think, within the next few months about what is needed there. But I think it's responsible for us to put that in the budget so that there's no questions or concerns later on, or, and just so our school community knows what's going on.
I agree. Okay. So Miss Miller, you heard that that we can add that. Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure you have that contract for purposes of what that amount is, and then we can have a discussion as to what that looks like.
And again, we don't have to amend until later
Okay.
because we are actually in line.
Okay.
So if we needed to do it for a couple months with them, we would be okay.
Okay.
Depending on how much it is, of course. I don't know how much that is, but.
Sure.
It is not all the reserves.
No, and I think that, I think the contract, it's here somewhere, but it's $4,500 a month.
Okay.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. Very good. Okay, let's move on to Building Corp financials. I know we talked about that deficit. Is there any concerns there with where we were for 22-23, but realizing that we have alignment in the 23-24? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have to.
Okay.
It's just the budget. Never mind. I'm on the wrong item.
Okay. X8 Global Contract number A, or item H.
So I have that contract tonight.
Okay.
If the board votes to do it, then obviously we'll execute that.
Gotcha. Anything to add or no?
I did add in those hours, that hour range that you gave us.
60 days, 30 to 60.
30 to 60, if it's 80, it's fine. Like
I put that range in there just so it was in there.
Okay. Okay.
On average.
Right.
Okay. 23-24 calendar. That was a great explanation. I feel much better in an amended calendar. I don't know if there's either comments from either of you, if we're good. Okay.
No.
Very good. School leader evaluation process. Did you?
Yes. So one of the requirements for that automatic charter renewal in October was that we had to evaluate our school leader. Obviously, we didn't have a school leader finish the school year. So we were in the process of that evaluation. The surveys had already gone out to parents. They had already been, a majority of them had been returned to the school. There was a survey that was sent out in October that we have those results. SAC did their own evaluation, which they did prior to the resignation as well. So with those data points, I've conferred with our legal counsel, and they're comfortable with us going forward evaluating Ms. Sankey in that position. So in the board packets was a preliminary evaluation of that position with different markers that we will be discussing in executive session. But also in the packet were all the survey results along with the answers to the surveys. Also involved in the survey that we recently, I think, closed out 2 days ago, if I recall correctly, it was 2 or 3 days ago we closed out, was the input from families regarding board performance. So that's part of our evaluation process. That's also required for our charter renewal. So those are also in those packets, along with the responses from parents. I think what we're hearing is that there's still a lot of people who are upset. There's some people who see some positive growth. So I think we're slowly treading forward. But I think as far as that school leader evaluation, that part's done. Also in the packet is a proposed process moving forward to evaluate school leaders that will also be hopefully adopted today, unless there's any changes to that. What I did is I pulled resources together from a bunch of other local charter schools. I'm talking to legal counsel or whatever, and so we have a process by which we will evaluate our school leader, and that will actually start at the end of every school year. It's kind of when you start doing it, you identify the goals going into the next school year. And then there's some inputs and some meetings. Basically, it's almost quarterly, different things that we will be doing with the school leader to make sure that we are on track and we're evaluating throughout the year. So
Okay.
it's in there, but that's all I have.
Thank you. Employee insurance rates. I'm going to lean on Mr. Manley and Mrs. Moore. I think Mr. Manley mainly. I know you and I had some exchanges yesterday trying to identify. I know that we're up soon in order to do some of those renewals. I know Anthem is our medical. I know Delta is our dental. I think in our vision. I think our vision stayed the same. Our medical decreased, and I believe that there was an increase of 12% when it came to dental with Delta. I don't know. The only thing I didn't know was timelines as to when we have to have that complete, but it sounds like we have time. That's not necessarily something that the board
We do.
needs to take action.
Yes.
Okay.
We had explained to the broker that we would probably have you guys vote on it tonight, but if that's not the case, then we can go ahead and, it doesn't start till August 1st.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
okay.
I'm going to make that a June
Okay.
point, just so that we're all clear that that's going to be something that the board will handle. I think by then, what would be helpful is maybe even a narrative that would help identify what the actual increase means. Like, if it's 12%, what does that mean? Is it $5? Is it $50? That would be helpful. And then if there could be also a comparison between if medical went down, I think it would be helpful to know what is that savings. Was it 5 or was it 50? I think that level of kind of explanation would be helpful to the board, certainly. But if we could make that a piece of that June component, I think that would be wise and helpful. And then my understanding is vision stayed the same. Still, maybe even a comparative this past, and then looking at the future. If that's the same, that's great. Any other thoughts there on employee insurance rates?
No.
And then finally, graduation. I know graduation is tomorrow. I will be here. I don't know if any other board members intended to be here, can be here.
I was going to come.
You are? Okay, perfect. I know it starts at 2. I'm going to be here at 1:30. Anything to add for tomorrow on thoughts on what to expect, or everyone's just
Congratulations,
excited?
the class of 2023, our
Yeah.
first class, you made it.
I know they were moving chairs today. I heard the walkie going off a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of setup going on. There's some signatures that need to be done on some
Okay.
diplomas
Sure.
for a couple of people. And no, we've got a line of speakers ready to roll.
Okay.
And some tassels to move.
Gotcha.
Just a couple
Tassels.
people? Hopefully all of them. Okay.
Yes, and the board will have a small gift for each of our graduates that I will bring with me tomorrow. But the board was kind enough to compiled ourselves together and just wanted to expand upon a theme I think that LTA is established, just to kind of continue that trend. So more to follow tomorrow when it's revealed, I guess.
The big reveal.
But anyways, yeah, I'm building it up, and it's probably going to be like, that was okay.
Lame.
Yeah, I hope it's not lame. I think it's good.
I think it's good too. Fantastic idea.
Okay, we're moving on to item 11, public comment. Let me read this. I don't know that we have anybody signed up. That sheet looked blank, but there are folks in the room. Our public comment is obviously only if you are in person. While we are broadcasting, the intent is that if there is public comment, that you do come to LTA and render public comment, but nothing stops anyone from sending in emails, or I get Facebook messages and text messages and phone calls as well. So let me just read this, and then we'll figure out if there's any comment. Public comment. We appreciate and welcome comments on Liberty Tree Academy school operations and programs as part of our public comment. We ask that your comments be made in a respectful and orderly manner. Follow-up action items may be assigned to the appropriate board or staff member, depending on the nature of the comments. During public comment, the board members may choose not to respond to any comment made in public session. In accordance with board policy, public participation is limited to 3 minutes per person. Thank you for participating in our public comment forum. Do I have anyone that would like to render public comment? I'm not seeing any head nods, and there is no one signed up on the sheet. So we will move past public comment. That brings us to item 12, which is executive session. Let me read these items, and then I'll ask for a motion. Executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 246402 4B conference with attorney for public entity regarding legal questions related to the principal hiring process and contract. Our attorney will be participating remotely. Item B, Colorado Revised Statute 246402-4, interim principal evaluation for the 22-23 academic year. And finally, item C, Colorado Revised Statute 246402, items 4E, Roman numeral 2, letter B and I, principal CEO hiring. If I could get a motion to move to executive session.
I make a motion to move to executive session in 5 minutes so we can take a break.
Could we do 10?
Okay.
Could you amend your motion?
I amend my motion to go into executive session in 10 minutes.
Very good. So right now it's 3:47. If I could get a second.
I second.
Okay, very good. Any objection? Seeing no objection, we will move to executive session at 3:57. Let's meet across the hall in the classroom that's over there.
Okay.
And participating in that will, for the time being, our attorney.
Amber DeCarly.
Very good, thank you. Mrs. Revord, Mrs. Helland, myself, and Mr. Peterson will be joining us remotely as well. All right, let's take our 10.